going on, everyone? Mr. Octagonal here. Now today the Madden 20 ratings have dropped, and I've been looking at these ratings for a while. Very fun to see where all of our favorite players are standing at. So what I have here is the most overrated and underrated player for each position. So without further ado, let's get right on into it. Starting with the quarterback position, there are a few players who I could have gone with for the most underrated. Aaron Rodgers is only a 90, even though I'm the biggest Packers hater on the planet. I think that's extremely disrespectful. Russell Wilson at a 91 was another one. I think he should be way higher. Even my guy Matthew Stafford, he's far from great, but I think a 79 is a little bit harsh. But the one that really stood out to me is Carson Wentz. I'm extremely high on Wentz. He had an MVP caliber season his second year. And last year, he wasn't quite as good. He was a little bit banged up for most of the year. But when he's at his best, he is an elite quarterback. Obviously, I don't think he's quite at that 90 status yet just because we haven't seen enough, just because he hasn't been consistently healthy. But when he's healthy, I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and I think giving him an 82 is really harsh. Personally, I'd give him an 87. Now on to the quarterback position for overrated, and there were a few options here as well. Andy Dalton at an 80 was a little bit high. Derek Carr at an 80 was a little bit high. Even Kirk Cousins at an 81 I thought was a tad bit high. And then Phillip Rivers, 94. Phillip Rivers is a great player, absolutely deserving of being like in that 92 range. But I don't think he's better than Drew Brees, A-Rod, or Russell Wilson. But the one that stood out to me here was Dak Prescott. I don't think Dak Prescott is that good of a player. I think he's a very bottom-tier starting caliber quarterback. I would say maybe in the 25 range if you were to rank them. And I think a 77 is a more reasonable rating. I just don't think he's that good. Yeah, he wins games, but that's mainly because of the Cowboys' run offense and their offensive line that Dak has been gifted. So I just think he's not that good. I don't know why the Cowboys are considering paying him superstar level money. I think the main reason why their offense has been really good is because of their talent on their offensive line and then Ezekiel Elliott. I think Dak, I'm not saying he's a backup quality quarterback, but he's just not even an average QB in my opinion, and putting him in the same discussion as Carson Wentz, I just don't agree with at all. So for that reason, Dak will get a 77. There were a bunch of overrated running backs. However, there weren't that many underrated. But I was sort of deciding between two, that being Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey. Could have made a case for someone like Alvin Kamara. His rating was a little bit low. I think Derrick Henry's rating was a little bit low. James Conner was a little bit low. But the main two I really got were McCaffrey and Barkley. And what can't Christian McCaffrey do if you really think about it? He's a threat in the run game, the receiving game, on special teams. He could really do it all. I'm extremely high on him this year, and I think he's going to have an incredible season for the Carolina Panthers, and I think he should be a 94. I think Saquon Barkley should probably be a 93, 94 as well. Maybe Saquon's a tad bit better as a running back, but what can Christian McCaffrey do other than maybe block? And for a running back, that's not the end of the world. So Christian McCaffrey definitely got underrated. There were so many overrated running backs. We'll just scroll from the top. Melvin Gordon, I really like Melvin Gordon, but having him higher than Saquon, McCaffrey, Kamara, no. Devontae Freeman at 89 is a little bit high. Chris Carson at an 87 is high. James White at an 86 is high. Lamar Miller at an 85 is extremely high. Dion Lewis at an 84, I don't get that at all. There are definitely more. LaShawn McCoy at an 82, I think is a tad bit high. Jerick McKinnon at an 82, I don't get that one bit. But I'm going to go with Phillip Lindsay here. Maybe I could have gone with Lamar Miller because I think Lamar Miller, he's an 85. Maybe his rating should go down by more than 4. However, I'm going with Phillip Lindsay just because the general population will probably agree with this. And I think Phillip Lindsay is quite an overrated player. Not saying he's a bad running back, but I think he's pretty average. Yeah, he had a good rookie season last year, but I just don't think he's that spectacular. He didn't have a bad season last year. Don't get me wrong. He definitely was far better than anyone's expectations as a rookie. However, having him as an offensive rookie of the year candidate, having him in the Pro Bowl, and then now having him an 86, I think is extremely generous. I think an 82 is fair for him. Hindsight, maybe I should have gone with Lamar Miller here, but Phillip Lindsay was definitely overrated in my opinion. Just like running back, wide receiver is a position where there weren't really that many underrated players and a bunch of overrated guys. Maybe not as many overrated players here at wide receiver, but there are certainly a few. However, for underrated, I decided to go with Keenan Allen. I think he's for sure a top 10, maybe even a top 6 or 7 wide receiver in the NFL. I think obviously the top guys are like Hopkins, AB, Julio, Michael Thomas, Odell Beckham, Devontae Adams, maybe Adam Thielen, but outside of that, I think you put Keenan Allen after all those guys. Having him at an 89, right below players like AJ Green, T.Y. Hilton, I think Keenan Allen is definitely better than both of those players. I only have him going up 2 spots to a 91. I thought both of those two guys, T.Y. and AJ Green, were overrated. So it's not that the 89 number itself is bad for Keenan Allen, but just for players who are right above him, I just don't agree with. So that's why I'm going with Keenan Allen. I almost went with Chris Godwin, but I just really like Chris Godwin, and I felt maybe that was a little bit too biased of me just because I really like his game. So could have gone with Godwin, but I'm going to end up going with Keenan Allen. There are plenty of overrated wide receivers. As I mentioned, T.Y. Hilton and AJ Green, they're good players, but I don't think they're quite 90 overall guys. Amari Cooper at an 89, bit high. Emmanuel Sanders at an 88 is too high. Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods, they're both 87s. I think that's too high. Cooper Kupp at an 84, not really a Cooper Kupp guy. Nelson Aguilar, Cole Beasley at an 83. I think for those two, that's too high. Tyrell Williams also at an 83. I don't really agree with that. But the most overrated, in my opinion, is Tyler Lockett. I'm not saying Tyler Lockett's a bad player, but an 87, that's putting him with players like Alshon Jeffrey, right below Juju Smith-Schuster, right below Julian Edelman. I don't agree with that. Tyler Lockett's never been an 87 overall type player. He's not awful, but he's just not that insanely good. And I think an 82 is more fair for him. Kenny Golladay, for example, is an 83. I think Kenny Golladay is a little bit better than Tyler Lockett, and I think an 83 is fine for Golladay. So that's why I have someone like Tyler Lockett going down to an 82. Tight end is another position where there's really not that many choices for most underrated, but yet plenty of guys I can go with for overrated. For underrated, I decided to go with O.J. Howard of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think he's a really talented player, certainly a top 10 tight end in the NFL. And for the top guys like Zach Ertz, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, I think their ratings are fine. Maybe George Kittle's a little bit low at a 90. However, I do think O.J. Howard's probably the most underrated. Could have gone with Kittle here. Wouldn't totally disagree, but I really like O.J. Howard. Have him going up to an 86, maybe even an 87. Really solid receiver and blocker, and he's pretty athletic, so I just think he's more complete than some of the other tight ends who are right around where he is. If I were to name the 10 most overrated players in this year's game, I bet 7 of them would be tight ends. Some of these ratings are ridiculous. Tyler Eifert, Jordan Reed at an 88. They're both talented guys, but I think that's a bit high. Trey Burton at an 87. That is ridiculous. Austin Hooper at an 85. I think that's crazy. Jimmy Graham at an 83. He was not that good last year. Vernon Davis at an 81. I didn't even know he was still in the league. Charles Clay at an 80, I think, is a little bit high. So some of these ratings are just totally ridiculous for tight ends. However, the most ridiculous has to go to Jason Witten, and he is an 83. How he's an 83, I have no clue. He's better than guys like David Njoku, Mark Andrews. There are some other talented players down here. I'm going to even say TJ Hawkinson because why not? But Jason Witten's the most overrated player in this year's game. I don't know why people are getting excited over this signing. Jason Witten was clearly regressing before he retired. Didn't play for a year, didn't work out or anything. He was just doing terrible in the booth. And now he's back with the Cowboys. I don't know why people think this is a good signing. And you're literally saying he's an above-average starting tight end in the NFL, which is flat-out ridiculous. I have him as a 66. I think at best he is a backup. If I was the Cowboys, I probably would have him on the fringe of getting cut. Maybe I'd keep him just because of name value. But outside of that, Jason Witten's not a good player anymore. I don't know where they're getting an 83 from. You have him in an 83 and David Njoku in an 82. That's flat out ridiculous. I don't know how Madden actually thinks Jason Witten is a good player. I just don't get it. He's not good anymore. 66, I think, is fair. There were 3 bold choices for me for defensive end. They were Frank Clark of the Kansas City Chiefs. He got an 83. Danielle Hunter of the Minnesota Vikings got an 86. but I'm going to go with Yannick Ngakoue of the Jaguars. I love Yannick Ngakoue. I think he's incredible. Giving him an 88, even that might be a little bit too low. Could have gone with Daniil Hunter here. Could have gone with Frank Clark, but I really like Yannick Ngakoue's skill set. He's been phenomenal for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I don't think he's been re-signed yet. Jacksonville needs to pay this man ASAP. He is incredible. Putting him in an 88 was probably even harsh of me, so probably he's more like an 89 or a 90. So Madden did a pretty good job this year for rating defensive ends. I don't think there were many who were too underrated, too overrated. And I'm going with Brandon Williams for most overrated of the Baltimore Ravens. He's not a bad player. He's a solid 3-4 defensive end for sure, but he's just not that spectacular anymore. He was a really good run stopper a few years ago. Not really impressive, not much of a pass rusher, so it's not that he's a bad player, but there weren't many other choices here for defensive end, and I do think an 86 is a little bit high for him, so I'm moving him down to an 82. Now on to defensive tackle, and this is another position where I feel that Madden did a pretty good job of rating players. For most underrated, I'm going with Chris Jones. He had an incredible year last year for the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm moving him up to a 92. I think he's definitely one of the best defensive tackles in the league. If you even consider him that, he's mainly been an end throughout his career, or I guess an edge rusher, as it's properly said these days. I know the Chiefs are moving schemes a little bit, so he may play inside now. I guess that's why he's listed as a defensive tackle this year. Personally, I think he should be a 92. I think that might be a little bit low of me. I definitely think he's in that conversation with guys like Kenny Clark, Geno Atkins, nearing the top for defensive tackles. Fletcher Cox is the number 1 D tackle. I think that's definitely fair. But for the second best defensive tackle, I think you can definitely make a case for Chris Jones to be that guy. For most overrated, I could have gone with Snacks Harrison for the Lions. My Detroit Lions, I should say, but instead we're going with a rookie. That is Dexter Lawrence of the New York Giants. I don't hate Dexter Lawrence. I gave him an early second-round grade, I think. I don't think he's an awful prospect, and I think he has a pretty good chance to be a good player. However, I do think a 76 was too high. They're rating him as one of the top 10 rookies, and I think early on he'll be a little bit raw. Not much of a pass rusher at this point, and he's a solid run stopper. Very athletic, but I do think he's raw right now, and I don't think he'll have a great rookie year. So I'm going to move him down to a 72. Darius Leonard had an incredible season last year. Well-deserved winning Defensive Rookie of the Year, and he only gets an 84. That is total disrespect. I think he should be an 89. He was incredible last year for the Indianapolis Colts and was huge in why their defense was as good as it was. Definitely their best player on that side of the ball. And I just don't get an 84 for him. He was so good last year. I don't know why you're putting him in the same conversation as, like, maybe a Zach Brown or something. I know Zach Brown's not an outside linebacker per se. Once again, not that outside linebacker is really a position now. But putting him in the same conversation as someone like Zach Brown, I think, is a little bit ridiculous. So I think Darius Leonard should definitely be in that 89 range. Now on to most overrated outside linebacker, and in my opinion, most overrated defender in this game. And that award goes to Jadeveon Clowney. He was gifted a 93 overall rating. And I say gifted because he doesn't really deserve it. There's a reason why him and the Texans have not agreed to a contract yet. And I don't think he's worth top edge rusher money. I don't think he's a top edge rusher. Is he a good player? Yes, but he's never recorded double-digit sacks on a D-line that features J.J. Watt going to the quarterback. So even when he's not the focal point of the pass rush, he's still not getting double digits. Isn't much in coverage, isn't a crazy good run stopper. While he's a freak athlete, he hasn't quite lived up to expectations, and he's been a good player, but 93 is definitely a little bit generous. They're saying he's one of the best pass rushers in the NFL, and while he's definitely a good pass rusher, saying he's one of the best is definitely a stretch, so I'm going to move him down to an 86. There weren't a lot of underrated middle linebackers for this year's ratings, and I do think Luke Kuechly deserves to be a 99, so I'm going to be choosing Luke Kuechly for this one. Yes, he was a 98, which is obviously very solid, but saying he's a 98 and Bobby Wagner's a 99, I would probably just swap those two. I do think Bobby Wagner is the number 2 middle linebacker in the NFL, but I think Luke Kuechly is the number 1, and then outside of Aaron Donald and Khalil Mack, Luke Kuechly might be the best all-around talent in the NFL. Now for the most overrated middle linebacker, I'm giving that to Joe Schobert. He's a pretty overrated player in general, and that is because all he does is tackle. And yes, he's a good tackler, but That's the stupidest stat on the face of the planet. As tackling is just basically luck, being at the right place at the right time, and he made a Pro Bowl off of this and is now a 79, which I guess isn't a crazy good rating, but I think he should go down to a 75. Could have given this to Blake Martinez, who's another example, just a really good tackler. These players are not special. Blake Martinez is an 82, putting him ahead of guys like Roquan Smith, Jordan Hicks, Quan Alexander, Eric Kendricks even, and I really don't agree with that. So I definitely think both of these guys are overrated, but I think more people do know who Joe Scobert is, so I guess that's the tiebreaker here. Now on to cornerback, and I was originally going to give this to Desmond King. However, I did a little bit more scrolling, and then that's when I finally came across Xavier Howard. Madden is basically saying Xavier Howard is basically a fringe number 1 corner, when in all actuality, he's definitely a top 10 guy in the league. He is an 83 this year. That's what I think he should have been last year. Last year, I thought he was extremely underrated, and I think if Madden gave him a more fair rating, he probably could have had a bigger role in my Dolphin series. Yes, he is still on the team, but he's the 5th string cornerback, so whoop-de-doo. And I think he should move out to an 88. I don't think he's quite as good as some of the top guys like Patrick Peterson, Darius Slay, Jalen Ramsey. I don't think he's in that conversation, but I would definitely put him top 10, and Madden's basically saying he's barely top 30, so I do definitely think he was underrated. The most overrated cornerback will be Desmond Trufant. Not a bad player, but Madden just generally overrates him. Can't really stay on the field too much. Talent-wise, maybe he's around that 85-86 range. Even so, I do think 88 is a little bit high, and Madden just values him way too much. In the beginning of the OFL this year, I did like a mock fantasy draft just to help everyone. Desmond Trufant was literally the 2nd pick by the simulation. So Jalen Ramsey went number 1, and then you have your choice of any player in the NFL, but you go Desmond Trufant. That makes absolutely no sense. If the actual NFL were to have a fantasy draft, I don't think he would be picked in the top 7 or 8 rounds. So that says something. Madden just really overrates him. Once again, not a bad player, but Madden just really likes him for some reason. Last but not least, we will be doing safeties, and the most underrated safety for me is Derwin James. He had an incredible rookie season last year for the Los Angeles Chargers, and an 86 is totally disrespectful. Other safeties who are 86 include Micah Hyde and Demarius Randall. Not that those guys are bad. 86ers are fine for them, especially Micah Hyde, but putting Derwin James in the same conversation as those two, I think, is a little bit ridiculous. So I have James actually moving up to a 92 overall. Definitely one of the most underrated players in this year's game. There weren't many safeties who are super overrated. Now that I look at it, I probably should have gone with like Tony Jefferson or something, but I do think LaMarcus Joyner was a little bit overrated as well. Joyner is pretty versatile. He can play nickel corner as well as safety. However, he's just not that special of a player, so I'm going to move him down to an 82. Once again, hindsight is 2020. Tony Jefferson probably wouldn't be in the 80s for me now that I think about it, so I guess you can make this a combination of LaMarcus Joyner and Tony Jefferson. So that'll do it for the video. Hope you all enjoyed. Madden 19 comes out for me in just about 2 weeks. I did get the $80 edition. That's when we will be starting. The Dolphin series will be ending any day now. I will be premiering the Super Bowl within the next couple days. And then a few days after that, we will be revealing my Madden 20 team. And I do want to have a few preview episodes leading up to the series. So that's the plan, Stan. Hope you all enjoy. Have a good one.